Jason was tired, hungry, and completely lost in the desert of Zirellia Prime. His dropship had crashed during a storm, and his only choice was to walk. Dust blew into his eyes, his lips were cracked. The sun above was like fire. He had not seen a single soul for hours. That's when he noticed a strange structure in the distance, huge, ancient, and glowing softly under the sand. It looked like a temple, half buried, but still standing strong. "I just need shelter," Jason muttered, pulling his jacket tighter as the wind screamed louder. He climbed the steps, brushed off the dust, and pushed the doors open. They creaked, echoing through the hollow halls. Inside, the air was cooler, quiet, and smelled of old stone and incense. Strange symbols lined the walls, glowing blue. Jason didn't care about the alien markings. He was too thirsty and too tired as he walked deeper into the temple. He heard something like splashing water. He turned a corner, following the sound, hoping it was what he thought it was. He stepped into a chamber lit by glowing crystals, and in the center was a beautiful pool. And in that pool was a girl, an alien girl with soft lilac skin, glowing tattoos on her back, and silver hair flowing down like silk. She was bathing, her back to him, unaware she was being watched. Jason gasped and quickly turned around, but the noise had already given him away. The girl spun around and screamed. Covering herself with her arms, guards burst into the room within seconds, weapons drawn. Jason raised his hands. "Wait. I didn't mean to. I didn't know," but the guards didn't listen. They tackled him to the ground, chains clinking as they restrained him. The girl stepped out of the pool, her eyes wide and furious. She pointed at him and said something in her alien tongue. The guards grew silent, then looked at each other in shock. One of them translated roughly, "He saw her, unclothed. Royal law says he must marry her or die." Jason blinked. "What?" The girl walked closer now, a towel wrapped around her trembling form. "I am Princess Zirellia," she said quietly. "And you have seen what no outsider is allowed to see?" Jason tried to explain. "It was an accident, I swear." She shook her head. "Doesn't matter, human. You stepped inside a sacred chamber, the temple of purity, where royal blood cleanses. No male, not even a servant, may look upon the princess without punishment." He looked around at the guards, every weapon pointed at him. No mercy in their eyes. He looked back at the princess, who seemed just as scared as he was. "If I say nothing," she whispered, "they will execute me too." For letting it happen, Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I'm going to die because I walked into the wrong room." Zirellia nodded slowly. "Unless you marry me?" He laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but no one else laughed. "It's real," she said. "The law is ancient. You saw my body. The only way to preserve royal honor is union." Jason looked at her. This wasn't just law. This was her life, and now it was his too. "Do I get a choice?" he asked quietly. She sighed. "You can say no. But they will kill us both." The guards took Jason away in silence. Zirellia watched with pain in her eyes, unsure if he would choose to live or walk away. Outside, the desert storm began to rise again, roaring like a beast inside the temple. Two lives had just been tied together by accident. The galaxy wouldn't be the same again. Jason sat on the cold floor of the palace holding cell. The walls were made of shimmering black stone that seemed to hum softly with ancient energy. He had no idea what time it was or how many hours had passed since the guards took him from the temple. His wrists were sore from the tight energy cuffs, and his head spun with questions. Was this a dream? A trap? A misunderstanding? Or was he really about to be married to an alien princess just because of an accident? The door slid open, and Princess Zirellia entered slowly, dressed now in a flowing violet robe with gold trim. Two guards stood behind her, silent as statues. Jason stood up, rubbing his wrists. "You again," he said quietly. "Please tell me this is all a huge misunderstanding." She didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she finally spoke. "Tomorrow. The council will decide if the marriage can proceed." Jason blinked. "Wait if it can proceed." Soraya nodded. "The law is ancient, yes, but there are rules. You are not Zirellian, you are not royal, and you are human." Jason frowned. "And if they say no?" Soraya hesitated, then whispered, "Then they will execute you to preserve my honor." Jason's heart dropped. "I didn't ask for this." Soraya's voice became sharper. "Nor did I." They stared at each other in silence for a long moment, both breathing hard, both scared. Finally, Jason sat back down and said, "So what do I do? Just wait and die?" She shook her head. "There may be a way, if we convince the council you are willing, respectful, and honorable. They might allow it." Jason looked up at her. "So I have to pretend I want to marry you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Not pretend. Mean it." The next day, Jason was brought before the royal council. The chamber was huge, shaped like a dome, with high seats circling around a glowing platform where Jason now stood. The elders wore masks of gold, each one carved with different faces: anger, wisdom, sorrow, pride. Soraya stood nearby in ceremonial dress, her silver hair tied high, her eyes fixed on Jason. The high speaker began. "The human stands accused of viewing the royal body without permission. According to Law 1439 of the Code of Purity, the price is death, unless a sacred bond is accepted." The hall echoed with murmurs. The speaker turned toward Soraya. "Princess, do you accept this human as your intended, according to Zirellian law?" Soraya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "I accept." The speaker turned to Jason. "Human, do you understand the consequences? This is no game. If you agree, you will be bound to her until death. If you break the bond, you will both perish." Jason looked at Soraya, then at the many alien eyes watching him from above. He took a deep breath and said, "I didn't mean to do any of this, but if walking away means her death, then I accept." The council went silent. Then, slowly, the speaker nodded. "Then let the ritual of binding begin." But not all were pleased. From the shadows of the hall, a tall figure stepped forward: Lord Varnak, a noble warrior and cousin to the princess. His voice was cold. "This is madness, a human sharing our bloodline." "This is a disgrace," the speaker warned him. "Varnak, the law is clear." Varnak growled. "Then I invoke my right to challenge the human. Before the final binding, there will be the trial of blood." Soraya gasped. "No, Varnak, don't." Varnak ignored her. His eyes locked on Jason like a predator. "If the human survives, I will never speak of this again. But if he dies, the problem solves itself." Jason looked at Soraya in confusion. "Trial of what?" Soraya's voice broke. "A fight to the death, back in the private chamber." Soraya threw a cup across the room in frustration. Jason flinched as it shattered against the wall. "You're going to die," she shouted. "He's trained in 10 forms of combat. He has killed before." Jason replied calmly, "If I run, I die anyway, right?" She stopped, breathing hard, then slowly nodded. "Yes." Jason sat down. "Then I'll fight. I'll train. I'll figure it out." Soraya looked at him, surprised by his resolve. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why not run?" Jason met her eyes. "Because you'd die too, and maybe I want to prove I'm more than just an accident." That night, Soraya sent for a secret ally, a disgraced war veteran named Kale, once her personal guard, now a silent outcast. When Kale saw Jason, he gave a low laugh. "This soft thing. You want me to train him?" Soraya whispered. "Please, Kale." He has 3 days. Cale looked into Jason's eyes and, for a moment, saw something familiar: defiance, fire, survival. He nodded slowly. Fine. But when he dies, don't blame me. And so began Jason's secret training, under moonlight, in hidden halls of the palace where no eyes could see. He didn't fight to win. He trained to live, and in the darkness, Soraya watched silently, wondering if this human really could survive the blood that now stained both their destinies. Jason could barely lift his arms. Sweat poured from his face, and every muscle in his body screamed. Cale, the old Zirellian war veteran, circled him like a hawk, his arms crossed. Again, Cale growled, tossing a wooden practice blade to the ground near Jason's feet. Jason picked it up, breath shaking. Can't I rest for just? Cale snapped. No. You want to survive the blood trial? You don't rest, you fight. From the shadows, Princess Soraya watched quietly. Hidden behind the old temple pillars, she came every night now, saying nothing, just watching. At first, she came to see if he would give up, but now, something in her chest stirred whenever she saw him rise after every fall. Jason swung again, this time faster, his body learning Cale's movements. He ducked a strike, twisted his blade, and landed a hit to Cale's side. The older man grunted. In surprise, you're learning. Jason fell back, gasping, not fast enough. Cale gave a small nod. You have 3 days left. That's plenty. If you don't die in training first. Later that night, Soraya approached him in the courtyard garden, where he sat alone with a bandaged shoulder. You could still run, you know, she said softly. Jason looked up at her with tired eyes. Yeah, but I won't. Why? She asked, sitting beside him. You don't even know me. Jason shrugged. I know you didn't want this either. I know you're risking everything too. He paused, then smiled. And I know. You have a very dramatic voice when you're angry. Soraya blinked, then let out a quiet laugh she didn't mean to. It surprised even her. I've never seen a human before, she admitted. You're different than I expected. Jason raised an eyebrow. Ugly. Loud. She shook her head, smiling slightly. Brave. The next morning, the preparations for the ritual of bonding began. Before the blood trial, tradition demanded the two take part in a series of trust steps, dances, rituals, and a strange thing called the gaze. Soraya explained, we must sit face to face and open our thoughts for a few seconds. It's a test of connection. Jason asked, will it hurt? She replied, only if you fight it. That afternoon, they sat across from each other in a sacred circle drawn on polished stone. They placed their hands over each other's hearts, and the ritual began. A light passed between them, a soft glow. Like fireflies dancing, Jason saw flashes, not full memories, just pieces. Soraya as a child, alone in a giant room, crying silently. Her mother's face gentle but cold, her father's voice commanding but distant. At the same time, Soraya saw pieces of Jason's mind. A young boy sitting on a rooftop staring at the stars. An empty chair at a birthday table. A crash. A broken ship. A lonely man drifting through space. When the glow faded, they pulled apart, both breathing hard. Both blinking tears from their eyes. Neither spoke at first. Then Soraya whispered, you really are alone. Jason nodded, and you're not as cold as you pretend. They looked at each other differently now. Not as strangers, not as enemies, but something new. Something fragile and unspoken. That evening, they walked together through the outer palace gardens. The sky above Zirellia Prime was deep purple, with 2 moons glowing softly. Soraya stopped by a water fountain shaped like a winged beast. I used to think marriage was a cage, she said, staring at the water, but maybe it could be something else. Jason stood beside her. I never thought I'd marry at all. She smiled slightly, especially not to someone with silver skin and glowing tattoos. He grinned. Especially not that. A voice interrupted them. Kale, stepping from the shadows. "We have a problem," he said, his tone serious. "Lord Varnock has requested the blood trial be moved up tomorrow at sunrise." Soraya's eyes widened. "He's trying to catch Jason before he's ready." Kale nodded. "He knows the longer you train, the more dangerous you become." Jason looked at both of them, then simply said, "Then I'll be ready by sunrise." Soraya touched his arm gently. "Jason, if you lose, they'll execute me too." He looked at her, heart pounding. "Then I guess I can't lose." She hesitated, then leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his an ancient Zirellian gesture of trust. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "you're not just doing this alone anymore." As the two moons moved behind the palace walls, the wind whispered through the stone. Somewhere deep inside the temple, the old laws stirred again, and two hearts, one human, one alien, beat a little faster. As the bond between them quietly began to grow stronger than either expected. The sky over Zirellia Prime turned blood red as dawn approached. Inside the training chamber, Jason stood in silence, his hand resting on the practice blade Kale had given him. He hadn't slept, not even for a second. The blood trial was only hours away, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown to death. Suddenly, the chamber door opened and a hooded servant slipped inside. "Human," the voice whispered. "There's still time. I can help you escape." Jason narrowed his eyes. "Who sent you?" The servant hesitated, then said, "Someone who believes the princess deserves to live and not die because of you." He tossed a small device on the floor, blinked, and shimmered. "A portable cloaking unit. You can vanish from the palace. Disappear into the outer cities. They'll never find you." Jason looked down at it, then up at the door, then back at the servant. "Tell whoever sent you." "Thanks," he said. "But no," the servant frowned. "You're a fool. They will kill you. And her." Jason simply replied, "Not if I win." The servant vanished into the hall, muttering, "Then both your blood will stain the stones by sunrise." Later that day, Soraya found Jason sitting alone beneath a statue of her great-grandmother, the warrior queen who had once united half the star systems. Her arms were folded, her crown tilted proudly on her stone head. Jason looked up at it and smiled. "She looks like you." Soraya raised an eyebrow. "Old and made of stone." He laughed. "No, like someone who scares the stars, but hides softness underneath." Soraya sat beside him, quiet for a moment, then said, "Kale told me you refuse to run." Jason nodded. "If I run, you die. If I fight, maybe we live." She didn't speak for a while, her fingers brushing the edge of her sleeve. Then she whispered, "I was going to let you go. You know, I even had someone ready to sneak you out." Jason turned to her, surprised. "Why?" Soraya looked away. "Because I didn't want your death on my heart. Because I thought maybe you deserved a choice." Jason was quiet for a moment, then said, "I do have a choice, and I'm choosing to stay." He stood up, facing her fully. "This isn't just about the trial anymore. I'm not doing this because I have to." Soraya's voice trembled. "Then why?" He took a step closer. "Because I want to. Because you matter now." Their eyes met. And for the first time, there was no fear, no law, no pressure, just a quiet understanding that something real had formed between them. A bond no council could order and no blood trial could destroy. But peace never lasted long in the palace. A loud crash echoed through the hall, followed by shouting. Jason and Soraya ran toward the sound, only to find Kale standing in front of Jason's room, sword drawn and smoke rising from a scorched wall. "Someone planted a microbomb," Kale said with a growl, "meant to go off while you slept." Soraya's eyes widened. Varnock. Kale nodded. "He doesn't want a fair fight." He wants you dead before the arena. Jason clenched his fists. Then he's afraid. That's something. Cale looked him in the eyes. You survive the arena, and people will start questioning him. If you win, they'll start following you. Jason shook his head. I'm not trying to lead anyone. Cale smirked. Doesn't matter. Sometimes leaders are chosen by what they endure. That night, Soraya came to Jason's chamber again. She didn't speak right away, just stood near the window. Watching the stars, Jason finally said, You're quiet tonight. She nodded. Because tomorrow, everything changes. Jason walked over, afraid. She turned to him slowly. For the first time. Yes, not of dying, but of losing someone before I even had the chance to love him. Jason froze, the air thick between them. He stepped closer, gently taking her hand. Then let's not wait, he said softly. If I fall tomorrow, I want to fall knowing this. Wasn't one-sided. Soraya's voice broke. It's not. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his, just like before. But this time her lips trembled near his, and for the first time, their kiss wasn't part of any ritual or ancient. It was real, warm, and full of fear and hope. Two souls holding on tightly before the storm. When morning came, the horns of the palace rang loud across the capital. Thousands of Zirellians filled the arena, whispering, laughing, betting on blood. And as Jason stood at the gate of the fighting pit, his heart thundered like a drum. Across from him, armored and grinning, Lord Varnock sharpened his blade with cruel delight. Jason's fingers tightened around his weapon. And in the stands, Soraya stood proudly, wearing no crown but her heart was full of fire. She had chosen him. Now it was time to see if fate would choose them both. The arena gates opened with a deep, grinding sound. Jason stepped forward, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. Dust rose under his boots as thousands of alien eyes stared down from the stone seats above. This was not just a trial. It was a show, a public display. A warning, this is what happens when a human dares to touch royalty. Across the arena, Lord Varnock stood tall and proud. Wearing silver armor edged in black, his sword was longer than Jason's arm and curved like a fang. He smirked at the sight of the human holding only a short training blade. The crowd chanted his name. Varnock, Varnock, Varnock. Jason glanced toward the royal balcony. Soraya stood there, hands gripping the edge, her knuckles white. Cale stood behind her, arms folded, stone-faced. Jason nodded once, just enough to let her know he saw her. A horn echoed. Through the sky, the speaker's voice boomed over the arena. By Zirellian law, this is the trial of blood. Death ends it, honor seals it. He raised his hand, then dropped it. Begin? Varnock charged first, fast, too fast. Jason barely rolled aside as the first strike slammed into the ground where he'd been. Sparks flew. Dust clouded the air. Jason scrambled up, blocking. The next blow with his smaller blade, the force knocked him back, almost breaking his arm. He gritted his teeth, pain surging through his muscles. Come now, human, Varnock taunted. Circling him like a predator, you thought honor would protect you? Jason didn't answer. He focused on his breathing, remembering Cale's words, don't match his strength. Match his mind. Jason led Varnock toward the jagged rocks near the arena edge. He slipped once on purpose, feigning weakness. Varnock took the bait, lunging forward for the kill, and Jason spun around. Slamming his boot into Varnock's knee, the alien roared in pain, stumbling. Jason ducked under the next swing and slashed across Varnock's arm, drawing the first blood. The crowd gasped. Soraya covered her mouth, her heart jumping. Jason backed away quickly, blade trembling in his hand. Varnock touched his wound, looked at the blood, and smiled darkly. "You'll pay for that," he growled. Varnak came at him harder now, less careful. Jason knew he couldn't win in a long fight. Every block shook his body. Every dodge drained his energy. But then, he saw it, the shadow on the ground above them, the chain. Old arena chains hung from rusted beams high overhead, left from ancient games. Jason ran for the rocks again, faking a limp, luring Varnak close. Then, just as the noble raised his blade, Jason ducked and stabbed into the ground, kicking up a cloud of sand. Varnak coughed, blinded. Jason leaped onto a ledge, then higher, and jumped, grabbing one of the chains. The crowd gasped again as the human swung overhead. He let go at the perfect moment, landing on Varnak's back with full force. The alien stumbled forward, smashing into a broken pillar. Jason didn't wait. He grabbed a loose stone and slammed it against Varnak's wrist, knocking the sword away. Then, silence. Jason pointed his blade at Varnak's throat. The noble, bleeding and gasping, looked up in disbelief. "You're just a human?" he spat. Jason replied, "Yeah, and I just won." The crowd went dead silent. The speaker stood, his voice shaking by blood. "The trial is complete." Then the impossible happened. Cheers erupted. Not just polite applause, but wild, roaring cheers. Aliens who once mocked him were now standing, chanting a new name: Jason. 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 Soraya ran down the steps, past stunned nobles and guards, straight into the arena. Jason turned as she threw her arms around him. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're alive." He held her close, his voice raw. "I told you. I wouldn't leave you." The emperor himself stood from the high throne, his long robe trailing behind him. He raised a hand and silence fell again. "The human has proven his strength," the emperor said, voice echoing through the arena. "And he has won the right to bind with my daughter." Then he added, "But there is one final test." Jason froze. "Wait, what?" The emperor continued, "The bond of flesh is only half. The bond of mind must also be accepted. You will enter the memory merge." Soraya stiffened. "Father?" "He's not Zirellian. He enters the merge and fails. He could die." The emperor stared down, unmoved, "Then let him prove that his soul is as brave as his blade." Jason looked at Soraya, her eyes wide with fear. He nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid, not anymore." Soraya held his hand tightly. "Then we do this together," she whispered. As the sun sank behind the temple walls, the arena emptied slowly up. But the real challenge still waited. Not a battle of swords, but of memories, of pain, truth, and the kind of love that could tear two minds apart, or bring them closer than ever before. Jason stood barefoot in the temple of mind, a place so silent it felt like time had stopped. The floor beneath him shimmered like water, even though it was solid. He wore only a simple tunic now, no armor, no weapons, no protection. Beside him, Soraya held his hand, her touch warm and trembling. Together, they faced the giant crystal throne where the High Oracle waited. The Oracle's voice was old and echoing, as if 1,000 voices spoke through her. "You come not as warriors, not as royals, but as minds willing to merge." She pointed to the twin memory stones behind her, one blue, one gold. "These will open your deepest truths. If you are compatible, your minds will bond. If not, your thoughts will clash, and you may lose yourselves forever." Jason looked at Soraya. "So this is like psychic marriage counseling." She almost laughed through her nerves. "Something like that." The Oracle nodded once, then said, "Begin." Jason and Soraya stepped forward and placed their hands on the stones. A sudden pulse shot through the chamber, and their eyes went white. They didn't fall. But they were no longer standing. They were somewhere else. Inside their minds, Jason found himself in the middle of a burning ship. Metal twisted and screaming, he stood as a child again, small and scared, hiding under a seat as his parents screamed over a channel. Their last words echoed, "Stay alive, Jason." No matter what. Then silence, smoke, then darkness. He wanted to run, but couldn't. Then Soraya was beside him, holding his hand. Seeing what he saw, her breath hitched as she whispered, "You lost them." So young, the scene changed suddenly. They stood in a giant throne room. A little Zirellian girl, Soraya, sat alone on a tall chair. Feet not touching the floor, a crown too big for her head rested beside her. Untouched, voices echoed around her, cold and strict. "Don't cry, princess," said one. "Royalty does not feel," said another. Jason watched as Soraya's face hardened. Hiding her pain, even as her heart screamed silently, he whispered, "You were never allowed to be a child." More memories flowed between them like river currents, fast and painful. Jason drifted through lonely nights aboard his scavenger ship, eating cold food, staring at stars. He had no one, spoke to no one, just silence. Year after year, Soraya floated through endless political ceremonies, forced smiles, fake promises. And jealous suitors always watched, never trusted, in both. Their lives' loneliness had grown like a shadow. Then something shifted. They stood again in the sacred pool where their story began. Jason turned, expecting Soraya to be angry again, but she wasn't. She was smiling softly, watching him. "This was the moment everything changed," she said. Jason nodded. "Yeah. And I didn't even understand the danger yet." Suddenly, pain flared. Jason saw Soraya kneeling beside her mother's body, tears staining her face as palace guards stood motionless behind her. "She died without ever telling me she loved me," Soraya whispered. Jason stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her. "I hear it now," he whispered. "She just didn't know how to show it." Then Soraya saw something Jason never told anyone, the day he nearly let himself drift into a sun. Engine broken, food gone, no messages replied. He had been ready to end it, but something stopped him, a soft voice on a rescue channel. "Don't give up, traveler. Keep breathing. Someone's coming." That voice had saved him. And now, standing in this memory, Soraya realized that voice had been hers, a speech she had broadcast to all space travelers long ago. She gasped, "That was me. I sent that message." Jason's eyes widened. "You saved me before we ever met." The world around them began to glow, the blue and gold lights spinning and weaving together. Their memories had crossed, not crashed. Their pain had matched, not clashed. Their souls, broken in different ways, had reached for each other like hands in the dark. The oracle's voice returned, distant but powerful. "The bond is true," she said. Two minds, now one. Jason and Soraya opened their eyes, blinking back tears. They were still holding hands. But something had changed. Now, when they looked at each other, they didn't see strangers or survivors. They saw home. The High Oracle stood and bowed, by mind and by flesh, by law and by choice. "You are now one," outside the temple. The bells of Zirellia rang across the cities. The people cheered not just for tradition, but for hope. Hope that maybe love, even across stars, could unite what war and law never could. As they stepped into the light, Soraya whispered, "What now, Jason?" He smiled, eyes still wet. "Now we show them what two broken hearts can build together." But far above, in the outer moons, a shadow moved. Not everyone celebrated their bond. Enemies watched in silence, preparing for the next move, because love may have won this battle, but peace was never guaranteed. The palace air was filled with song and light. Banners waved from every tower, and crowds danced in the streets of Zirellia Prime. For the first time in over 100 years, a royal bond had formed with someone outside the empire. A human. Jason wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was now Prince Consort of Zirellia, husband to Princess Soraya, bonded by law, memory, and choice. But he didn't feel like royalty. He still walked like a soldier, ate like a traveler, and flinched. When palace staff bowed to low, he spent more time in the gardens than in the throne room, and whenever he could. He trained with Kale not because he needed to anymore, but because it made him feel grounded. Titles don't make you strong, Kale once said, smirking. Scars do. Soraya had changed too. No longer cold or distant, she now laughed more, argued less, and smiled when no one was watching. She began rebuilding the old temples, opening them to the public. Let them see we are not untouchable, she told the council. Let them see we bleed and love like they do. Some nobles resisted, but most could not argue with a princess whose people now loved her. Not just followed her. One evening, Soraya and Jason stood on the palace balcony. Watching the twin moons rise, lanterns floated into the sky, each carrying the wishes of a family. Jason pointed to one. That one's drifting toward the stars. Soraya leaned against him. Maybe it carries a wish big enough to reach them. He chuckled. Like what? She turned to him, eyes glowing under moonlight. A wish for peace, she said. A wish that what we've built lasts, but peace never stays silent for long. A week after the bonding, a secret message arrived. A drone ship landed just outside the city, carrying a single data crystal. Kale brought it straight to Jason and Soraya in the private chamber. It's from the outer moons, Kale said, his voice tight. You'll want to see this. Jason inserted the crystal into the holoviewer. The screen flickered, showing a hooded figure, an elder from the Blackwing Syndicate. They were exiles. Former royals who had rejected Soraya's bloodline generations ago. The figure spoke. In a hissing voice, your union is a stain on our traditions. Human blood will never rule here. Enjoy your moment before it burns. Soraya's breath caught. They're planning something. Jason's jaw tightened. Let them try. Kale warned, the Black Wings are not fools. They never show their hand unless they're already moving. The next days were tense. Guards were doubled. Cities scanned. Watchtowers lit every night, but no attack came. And then something unexpected did. Soraya walked into their chambers one evening, holding something small in her hands, a clear orb glowing softly with gold light. Jason looked up. What is that? Soraya's voice trembled. A life crystal. He blinked, confused. Meaning? She smiled slowly. I'm with child, Jason. We're going to have a baby. The world seemed to pause. Jason stared at her, then at the orb, then back. At her again. You're sure? Soraya nodded. Completely. Jason stepped forward, gently placing his hand on hers. Tears touched his eyes. I never thought I'd be part of something like this. A family, Soraya whispered. You are my family now and soon. Our child will be the future of two worlds. The news spread like wildfire. Zirellia's first hybrid child, born of alien royalty and a human. Some nobles panicked, some celebrated, but the people, they wept in joy. They lit fires in every city and named the unborn child Hopefire. The one who would carry the blood of two stars, yet far from the celebrations, deep within the shadows of the broken moons. The Blackwing Syndicate gathered in silence. Their leader watched the royal news from a hidden command post. She carries the child, he growled. Then we strike not to destroy the human, but to take the child when it is born, back on. Zirellia. Jason stood with Soraya in the nursery being built in the palace. He placed a small hand-carved star above the crib. I made this, he said, smiling. From the shipwreckage that brought me here. Soraya touched it gently. Then our child will sleep under the stars that changed everything. Jason turned to her, voice steady. I don't care what enemies rise. I don't care who threatens us. I'll fight every shadow, every assassin, every warlord. As long as you're beside me, she whispered, always, and so. In a galaxy torn by pride and war, human and a princess had done the impossible, not just surviving together, but building something greater. Something born not of power, but of trust, pain, and an accidental moment inside a sacred temple. They were never supposed to meet, but fate had other plans. And from one forbidden glance came a bond strong enough to shake empires, a new kind of home written in stars, sealed by memory and protected by love.